I am a 27-year-old guy from Pennsylvania, and honestly, I feel like I came out of the womb holding a broom and a casserole dish because my entire life has been one long unpaid internship called being the responsible one. My mom, Linda, remarried when I was 15 to a man named Greg who was fine at first in that quiet, bland stepdad way, where he buys you a bike helmet on your birthday instead of something you might actually want. But things changed the moment his daughter entered the picture. Her name is Madison, but she insisted everyone call her Maddie. She was 12 when they moved in, already perfected at weaponized tears, and fully trained in the art of Daddy Fix It, which was code for open your wallet and do not ask questions. I grew up mowing lawns and doing chores for allowance. She grew up crying until she got a brand new phone because the rose gold color offended her soul. We were raised in the same house, but on two different planets. Meanwhile, while Greg was promising her new outfits because she fluttered her eyelashes, I was browsing Craigslist for a $50 phone with a battery that lasted 10 minutes on a good day. Fast forward to adulthood. I lost my job last year when the company downsized and returned home while I figured things out. I immediately offered to pay rent, bought my own groceries, covered my own car repairs, and grabbed every DoorDash and handyman gig I could get. I never asked for help. I never asked for favors. I did what I always did, handled business myself. Maddie, now 24, also still lived at home. Except she paid nothing. Zero. She worked part-time at a kids' clothing boutique where the hardest part of her day was choosing which Starbucks drink to show off in her Instagram stories. All her money went to nails, hair extensions, endless brunches, and whatever trend TikTok shoved into her face that week. My mom and Greg always said, "We do not want to pressure her, she is still finding herself." Interesting definition of finding yourself, but okay. But even though she had no responsibilities, somehow I became the designated babysitter and housekeeper the moment I stepped through the door. Because Maddie had two kids, Oliver, 5, and Daisy, 2. Two different fathers, both unreliable, both allergic to responsibility, both contributing pocket change when they felt guilty enough to send it. And who filled in the gaps? My parents. And then, once I moved in, me. It started small. Mom would poke her head into my room and say, "Daniel, you are so good with kids. Can you watch them while we run errands?" Or she would say, "Maddie has a lot on her plate. Be the bigger person." Bigger person for what? For having a job? Knowing how to boil pasta? Being able to function without crying because a shirt did not fit right? Maddie once claimed the stove was too confusing, which would have been funny if it did not mean she expected someone else to cook. Everything spiraled when Maddie announced she was starting a kids' fashion influencer page. In theory, it meant styling her kids in outfits from the boutique. In practice, it meant she wanted full-time, on-call childcare while she took pictures at golden hour. She came to me one morning and said in that fake sweet tone she uses when she wants something, "Danny, I need you to watch the kids from 9 to 5 this week. It is important." I told her I had job interviews and delivery shifts. She pouted, stomped off to Mom, and 5 minutes later, Mom came into my room with the sigh she saved specifically for me and said, "Daniel, can you help her out this month?" Month. She upgraded it immediately, and because apparently I am soft when it comes to kids, I agreed. I said, "Just this 1 week." But that week grew legs and sprinted into 2 full months. I was waking up early to get the kids breakfast because Maddie was too exhausted. I was folding laundry every single day, even though half of it was never mine. I was washing dishes that piled up like an archaeological dig of breakfasts, lunches, and dinners Maddie promised she would clean later. I vacuumed, mopped, refilled juice cups, settled tantrums, entertained Daisy by dancing around like an idiot while trying not to fall asleep on my feet, and then went out at night to make deliveries so I could afford my own phone bill. Maddie, meanwhile, would come home after hours of content creation, throw her shoes across the living room and say, "Wow, you are a lifesaver, Danny. You are so good with them." Mom looked proud, like she believed she had raised a saint. I felt like I had been drafted into a war I never signed up for. Then came the morning that changed everything. Maddie burst into my room at 7 in the morning, dragged Oliver and Daisy inside without even knocking, dropped two full laundry bags next to them, and said, "Can you fold these too? I am meeting friends for a content shoot." I said I could not. She rolled her eyes and told me I was being dramatic, and something in me snapped like a dry twig. I told her I was done. Not just done for the day, done for 2 entire weeks. No babysitting, no chores, no errands, no dishes, no laundry, nothing. I was not her nanny, not her maid, not her unpaid life raft. My mom acted like I had declared myself the villain of a Hallmark movie. She said, "Daniels, do not punish the children." I told her I was not punishing anyone except the system they let Maddie run. Greg stayed out of it until Maddie cried into his shirt that I hated her and wanted to ruin her career, and then he tried to give me a speech about sacrifice. I told him, "You go ahead and start sacrificing, because I am finished." And then I sat back and watched the implosion. It was like watching the world's slowest, messiest natural disaster. The dishes started forming a colony of their own. Laundry exploded across the couch. Toys covered every inch of the carpet. Oliver and Daisy cried constantly because Maddie could not handle more than 5 consecutive minutes of responsibility. Mom lectured me daily that this cannot continue. And every time she said it, I reminded her it had been continuing for a year and she just never noticed because I was dealing with it. Then came day 13. Maddie barged into my room again while I was filling out job applications, threw open the door like she was the sheriff in an old western, and said Oliver threw up and that Mom was at work and she had plans. I asked why she could not cancel. She said, "Because I have to film. Stop making everything difficult." I told her no. She called me selfish. I told her I was not responsible for fixing her life. She screamed that I was dead to her. I said that was fine. 2 hours later, Mom came home furious and told me Maddie said I screamed at her. I told Mom exactly what happened. Mom said I could have been nicer. I told her if I were any nicer, I would be a doormat nailed to the floor. The next morning, before the sun was up, I packed every single thing I owned into my car. I told no one. I did not even leave a note. I drove to a tiny basement studio near my friend's place. It was $700 a month, but I felt lighter the moment I walked inside. Mom called crying that I was abandoning the family. Maddie texted me that I was evil. Greg said I could have handled things better. I blocked all of them. And here's where things get interesting. Turns out Mom and Greg had no idea how much I actually held that house together until I left. It took exactly 48 hours for everything to collapse. They had spent so long convincing themselves that Maddie was this fragile little porcelain doll who needed to be shielded from the slightest discomfort that they never stopped to consider who was actually holding the household upright. Spoiler, it was me. It was always me. The first week in my new place felt like the first deep breath I had taken in a decade. No kids crying outside my door at dawn, no Maddie stomping around demanding favors, no passive-aggressive comments about how I should help because I was so responsible. It was quiet, peaceful. My own space, even if it was a basement studio with a water heater in the corner that hummed like an industrial generator. Meanwhile, back home, disaster bloomed like mold in a dark room. Mom tried to pick up the slack first. She would clock out from her full-time job, drive home, step into a house that looked like a toddler explosion zone, and go straight into cleaning mode. Dishes piled up like a game of Jenga. Laundry sat in baskets begging for mercy, and a permanently sticky layer of something unidentifiable coated the dining table. And then, after cleaning, she still had Oliver and Daisy to deal with, because Maddie had apparently decided that parenting was optional now that I was not around to do it for her. Maddie continued her routine of sleeping until noon, and then announcing she needed the right mindset to film content. She would leave the kids with Mom and Greg, vanish for hours, and then come home ranting about lighting or angles, or how her follower count was not where it should be. Greg tried to pretend everything was fine, He buried himself in work, avoided any mention of chores, and absolutely refused to discipline Maddie. Anytime Mom even hinted that Maddie needed to contribute, he jumped in with the same tired excuse he had used since she was 12, insisting that she had too much on her plate and needed support. Except now there was no Daniel-shaped safety net to catch all the pieces of their chaos. 3 days after I left, my phone buzzed with a message from Mom, saying that she was sorry things got heated, that they missed me, and that she wanted me to come talk. I stared at the message for a minute, locked my phone, put it face down, and went back to organizing my tiny kitchen. I was not ready. I had not even fully processed the fact that I had actually left. The idea of walking back into that house made my chest tighten. Then, a few days later, another message came in from her saying that she had not realized how much I had been doing and that she should not have taken advantage of me. That one stung in a different way. Not because she finally acknowledged it, but because of how long it had taken. I still did not respond. I needed time. And for once in my life, I chose myself instead of rushing back the second she asked. As for Maddie, her reaction was predictable in the most entertainingly dramatic way possible. She posted this long, vague Instagram story with pastel text over a mirror selfie about how she was surrounding herself with positivity and cutting out snakes in the family who were trying to bring her down. Then she filmed herself doing her makeup while talking about how some people cannot handle seeing others succeed, and how she was done with toxic energy. It was comical because she conveniently left out the fact that the toxic energy she was referring to was me refusing to fold her laundry while she hung out with her friends. A few days later, she started asking her followers for childcare suggestions because she said she could not find any time for content creation when she had the kids all day. One follower innocently suggested daycare. Maddie replied with a horrified comment saying daycare was too expensive and that she could not afford something like that. She was right. Daycare was expensive. I knew that firsthand. I know because I paid for 1 week last year when she forgot her card. A few days after Maddie's Instagram theatrics and daycare debates, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, I almost did not recognize Mom. She looked worn down, like life had physically carved stress lines into her face overnight. Her hair was messier than usual, her eyes red and rimmed, her shoulders slumped as though she had been carrying the weight of the world on them for decades, and could finally no longer bear it. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, sinking onto my couch as if it were the only place she could rest. From the moment she walked in, I could tell she was holding back tears and exhaustion in equal measure. She started talking immediately, telling me about how she and Greg had been fighting nonstop, arguing over Maddie and the kids. Greg refused to enforce any kind of rules or responsibilities, insisting that she stop pushing Maddie so hard, and that she needed to be understanding because Maddie was just finding herself. Mom said she had finally drawn a line, telling him she was not Maddie's maid and that she refused to keep doing everything alone. Greg had countered with the usual blame shifting, saying that if I had not abandoned them, none of this would have happened. That was when Mom's voice changed. She admitted that in that moment she realized that Greg expected me to be a permanent crutch, a built-in solution to every household and childcare problem, and she hated herself for going along with it for so long. Her exhaustion was a mixture of decades of doing everything, silently shouldering the invisible labor of her family, and the sudden clarity that she had allowed the imbalance to persist. Then she dropped a bomb I did not see coming. Mom said she was seriously considering separation, not because of Maddie alone, though that was a huge part of it, but because she finally recognized that her entire marriage had been her doing all the work, while Greg treated parenting like a performance art. He babied Maddie, indulged her whims, pretended he was being a good parent by handing her money and agreeing with every tantrum, and Mom had carried the practical weight of everything. She admitted that she had ignored my struggles and sacrifices because she was too busy keeping everything from falling apart, and for that, she was sorry. She said she should have protected me too and that she had failed in ways that were long overdue to acknowledge. I listened, stunned. I had not expected an apology of this magnitude, nor did I anticipate hearing her talk about leaving Greg in a way that sounded like relief rather than rage. There was honesty in her words that I had never experienced before. An acknowledgement that our family had been built on a precarious hierarchy where I was always at the bottom, expected to prop everyone else up. We talked for hours, unpacking everything that had led to my leaving, everything Maddie had done, and the years of invisible labor I had performed. I told her I needed space, that I could not just walk back into that dynamic without risking my own sanity, but I also made it clear I was not shutting the door forever. I wanted to see her safe and happy, and if she was ready to rebuild her life and her household in a healthier way, I was willing to be there, but on my own terms. By the end of our conversation, hours later, the exhaustion on her face had shifted from tense frustration to something quieter, something relieved and vulnerable. She reached across the couch and without any further words, she hugged me. She cried and hugged me. Last week, my phone buzzed with a message from Mom. I opened it and immediately sensed the tension radiating from her words. Maddie had a meltdown. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly because at this point, Maddie's meltdowns felt more like a predictable plot twist than actual news. Apparently, Mom had finally drawn a line. She told Maddie she either needed to get a real job or start paying rent. Maddie's reaction was pure chaos. She screamed, accused Mom of choosing Daniel over her, and stormed out of the house with Oliver and Daisy in tow. I did not need the full report to imagine her storming out, bags in hand, leaving a trail of chaos behind her. The friend she went to stay with quickly realized that handling Maddie and her kids was no vacation. Within 48 hours, Maddie was out again because Oliver had drawn on their walls and she'd left Daisy's dirty diapers strewn across the floor. The friend had zero patience for her entitled, hands-off approach to parenting. Now Maddie is staying at Greg's sister's house, and the reports I got from Mom were priceless. For the first time in years, Maddie is miserable. She is surrounded by people who actually enforce rules, people who expect her to clean up after her kids, people who do not bend the universe to cater to her whims. She has no audience to manipulate, no built-in support system to bail her out. It is the first time in a very long time that she has had to confront the fact that adulting is not optional. Meanwhile, Mom has officially filed for a trial separation from Greg. She told him she will not be responsible for raising his adult daughter, and for once he could not talk his way around it. He begged, pleaded, tried to manipulate, but Mom finally grew a spine and said no. She is not letting herself be trapped in a marriage where she carries the entire burden of a household that should have been shared equally for decades. She is finally prioritizing her own sanity and setting boundaries she should have enforced years ago. As for me, life has taken a turn I had longed for but never truly expected to find. I landed a full-time job with better pay than my old position. I am saving diligently, planning for my own proper apartment, where I can have space and peace without someone else's chaos bleeding into every corner. The freedom is intoxicating. Mom and I talk a few times a week, cautiously but sincerely as we rebuild a relationship that was strained under years of unseen labor and manipulation. She finally understands the full extent of what Maddie had been doing, the way she had manipulated and leaned on me for all the work while appearing innocent and helpless. The revelations have been hard for her, but also freeing. She is learning to trust me to take care of myself and to set boundaries just like I did. Maddie, of course, has not been idle. She sent me a message yesterday, a simple, loaded question. Can we talk? I did not respond. Some doors stay closed. Some lessons only hit after years of being forced to navigate the consequences of one's choices. And I am no longer interested in being the lesson plan. I am done being the unpaid babysitter for someone who refuses to grow up. I am done being the built-in crutch, the invisible labor, the one who silently carries everyone else's life on my back. And honestly, it feels amazing.